was our last class. Big finish. So how is everybody doing? Anyone have any questions? Crickets? No, crickets.
I just got my sewing machine back from the repair, so
Oh no.
yeah.
So what kind of machine? I'm just curious. I always like to know.
Oh, it's a 1970s Kenmore.
Okay.
And it's actually one of those metal ones
Yeah,
still.
that you could. Yeah, they refer to them as boat anchors in the trade, but that's interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It takes both hands to carry it, yeah. But the wheel was out of sync with the needle, and so
Uh-huh.
it wasn't, yeah. So but I use it because it can handle these heavier fabrics.
Mhm.
And so it was a minor thing. So, but I was also doing some traveling. So I'm a little behind,
That's
but
okay. This is, you have that's why we have the videos so you can
yeah.
look at the video and you all got the email from last time with all the videos on it. So they're all in
Yeah.
one place now, all of them. So yeah, so you
But
know, go
I
ahead.
do have a request that's
Yeah.
related to your traveling out to Tacoma in July
Uh-huh.
for the moulage course,
Hmm.
because I'm going to be doing that.
Oh,
I've signed up
yay.
for that. But when you came out last time, you had some wheels with the sterling silver handles.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Would you bring one out that has this make that has little spikes? Because I have the solid wheel, and I'd
Okay.
like one that has the
Yeah,
yeah
what I
the
would say is, excuse me, email me closer in and I'll just make sure I have one made up special for you.
okay.
Yeah.
I like using that. It's
Yeah.
I like using pretty tools.
In case you're wondering what she's talking about, I make sewing tools with sterling handles. And so, because she had, you can get these with the spiky wheels, or
I
you can
want this
get them
back.
with the smooth, and also seam rippers, stilettos, other kinds of things. So, whether, you could actually, if you're interested, just email me and I can send you photos of the handles I have. Actually, Sally, that might be a good thing because I can show you what I have in stock as far as handles now.
Okay, that'd be lovely.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's, in case anyone's interested, it's one of those little things I do because, you know, that's what I do. I make things. So
I I have I was going to say I have one of your seam rippers and a stiletto. And given that I am prone to ripping out stitches for various reasons, it's nice to use a nice tool for it.
well, the seam
Feel
rippers,
better.
I use they're different little blades, and I buy the best ones because I see personally seam rippers. I can't really make a seam ripper work. I know that sounds crazy, but so I use the little like the Tailor point scissors
Yeah,
as my
yeah.
seam rippers. But hey, I think part of the reason I have this kind of reluctance to use the seam ripper is in the past when because I kind of inherited my mother's sewing tools, and I realized that her seam ripper was probably not very sharp, and so that kind of got me kind of because there are certain things if you have a bad experience early, you tend not to go back to it. So maybe that I think is my reticence about using a seam ripper, but they're great. So yeah, okay. So questions? Anyone have questions? Crickets, no crickets. Yeah, I see. I'm not going to hold you hostage because I know that this is a holiday weekend and you all have taken time out of your day. But so yes. So if there are no questions, let us just start the video, and we can also have questions after the video as well. So let us proceed. And as always, um, don't be shy about asking questions because that's what I'm here for. So let's get going. Our next task is installing the shoulder pads. Now, as I showed you in the materials video, this is what's called a raglan shoulder pad. So it doesn't have a hard edge here. So the fabric falls over and creates a soft looking shoulder. Now, what we're looking at is this seam here. Some of them have it, some of them don't. I prefer this particular shape. So what you want to do first is you want to find the midpoint and mark that. And we have a little notch here, which I will emphasize. So these two marks are going to center on the shoulder seam. Now, looking into the jacket, I'm going to come in. There we go. So what I want to do here is I want to measure from the neck seam, which is here, 5 inches out. And let's see, 5 inches is here. Neck seam is here. So 5 inches is to there. So what I want to do here, let me just camera here. So 5 inches, that we want to mark because I'm going to peel this back and we're going to put that mark right there. And then put a pin here. So we have a pin right there. And so then we want to just walk the shoulder pad up so that the notch here sits on the seam. So that's step 1. Now I'm going to go thread a needle for the next step.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have really narrow,
Yeah.
distance from, and so when a normal shoulder pad, if I have it at my the end at my shoulder, it is actually really right next to my neck versus next to a seam.
Yeah.
So I like to have it a little beyond my shoulder to actually make it look like I have shoulders.
Yes.
But then I have this weird empty space underneath it.
So what you could do is you could actually, instead of 5 inches from the neck shoulder intersection, you could take it 4.5. And so another thing that you could do if because there is, if you look at your body, there's the shoulder, the collarbone, and from the neck, you dip down slightly and then you raise up where the shoulder joint is. What you could even do if you wanted to make sure that the garment doesn't fall into that little hollow is you could actually stiffen out the shoulder pad with some canvas. If you stitch a couple layers of canvas together and kind of stitch it to the top of the pad, it would sandwich between the garment and the shoulder pad. And you do some kind of big loose basting stitches through the canvas and the shoulder pad. And what that will do is it will stiffen out the pad at that area so it doesn't want to cave in where the shoulder dips down.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So other questions? We good?
Actually, Kenneth, I do have a question, and it's probably Captain Obvious moment, but if we're not doing a raglan sleeve, we'll place the shoulder pad at the intersection on the shoulder seam, right?
Well, no, actually, if you're using a set-in sleeve, what I like to do, I will use a set-in sleeve shoulder pad first off. The second thing I would do, and this is where misinformation and debates rage, but I'm right on this one. What I like to do, and so you're going to take you put the garment, before you set the sleeves, you put the garment on, say, a dress form. And what I do is I put the shoulder pad in, and there's like a little notch where that's cut into the edge of the set-in sleeve shoulder pad, and that you match that with your shoulder seam. So then what I'll do is I'll kind of push out the shoulder pad so that the two ends of the shoulder pad intersect with the cut edges of the seam allowance. So the pad itself can hang out even like a half inch or so beyond the cut edge at the shoulder seam. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
See what you want to do.
cut
The
edge,
object
got it. So
you want to cut the edge of the shoulder pad to match the cut edge of the seam allowance on the body.
so it helps push the sleeve head out a bit.
And
Okay, I
so
got
that,
it.
yeah. And so
Yeah.
what I like to do, just kind of to finish the thought, what I like to do then, because there are some people who will say, oh, you put the cut edge of the shoulder pad right on the stitching line. That's absolutely incorrect. Unless you want to make it look like an unmade bed. After I've sewn the sleeve in, what I do is I'll install the shoulder pad, matching the cut edges of the shoulder pad with the cut edges of the seam allowances of the armhole. Are you with me?
That makes total sense. I
Yeah.
can see how
And
much better.
then once you have, and so what I'll do is I'll sew everything together about an eighth of an inch inside the stitching line, just so that it all holds together. And then after that, I'll put the sleeve head between, there's that fold between the seam allowance and the body on the sleeve part. So what's going to happen is you're going to have the shoulder pad, and then there are the seam allowances of the body and the sleeve. And then there is the sleeve head. And so the seam allowances are sandwiched between the sleeve head and the shoulder pad. Did that make sense?
It did. I got it.
And it's, and there are people, like I said, debates rage. There are people who say, oh, you shouldn't do that. I find that for the kinds of tailoring I want, that gives a better look. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So other questions? Okay, then let us continue. So I have my needle threaded double with a contrasting thread. So I'm going to turn this out because I want to just sew a little running stitch through the seam allowance. Remove the pin. There we go. Now, this is not a tight stitch. You don't use a lot of tension on it, but you just want to sew about a quarter of an inch from the stitching line. You can go a little closer if you need to. This just anchors the shoulder pad to this seam. And I like to stop it right there. There we go. So you can see that the fabric just drapes over that shoulder pad. Now I will go off camera, install the other one, and bring back the results. You can see here, we have the shoulder pads in. So the next step is to bring in the lining. Now, I'll sort this all out in a moment. Let me change the camera angles, but we're ready now to install the lining. Now, if you remember, we press back 3/8 of an inch on the cuffs. We also pressed back 3/8 of an inch on the hem. You'll be glad you did this. So the next step we want to do is we want to open up the jacket because we're going to be sewing this in by machine. The object here is to match shoulder seams of the facing to the shoulder seams of the lining. And then we're going to match it down. Because we want to match the lining to the front facing, or the front part of the facing first. So now when we get down to closer to the hem, there's a little measure and mark sort of thing that I need to do. So let me get closer. Here we are. Okay. So now what we want to do, here we are, down here. We want this to fold up right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure 1.5 inches from this fold and make a little snip. Zoom in so you can see that. So 1.5 inches from the fold. So what this will do then is we're going to fold back on that fold, and we're going to pin here and pin here. Oh, there we are. So we're going to pin up to here, and then we're going to pin to here, because ultimately we're going to be hand sewing this and machining this. So I will go do the other side, and then we'll bring back the results. I'm finishing up here. Okay, so I'm going to go get a needle and thread.
Janet?
Yeah,
Sorry,
bring it right
quick
back.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I noticed you turned under that 3/8 on this side, but you didn't on the other side.
Yeah, not absolutely crucial.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I have the needle and thread, and I'm just going to sew this little section about 4 inches up. Because ultimately we're going to blend the machine stitching down to here as best we can. So that holds so. I'll sew the other side, and then we will continue pinning. So we have from the shoulders down pinned. So the next step really, I want to just give a few little clips on the curve of the back lining, so it can go around the curve of the facing. And then we want to pin.
Kenneth, do you stay stitch that
Matching.
edge on the lining?
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah. Because ultimately what you want, and that's why I did a little bit of clipping. If that stretches a little bit, no big deal, because how we're going to get the pleat at the back is whatever whatever, we're pinning it and working towards the center. And whatever ends up extra is what we create the pleat from. So you don't really have to stay stitch that back.
Got it. Thank you.
So what we're doing here is we're pinning from the shoulder seams down to the center. And what will happen, one side goes down first, like so. And then we come back here and pin the other side, and anything left over is going to be the pleat in the center back. It is what it is. You can see here we have just a teeny bit of pleat. Sometimes it ends up a little more, sometimes it ends up a little less. Probably what happened is this facing stretched. But that's why we didn't press a crease on the pleat. So really what we've done is we pinned from here to here, from here to here, and any extra turns into a pleat, larger or shorter, depending. So this I'm going to take over to the machine. And so there's no real mystery about that. So I'm going to machine off camera and I will meet you at the pressing table. So here we are at the pressing table, and I just want to show you what this looks like, these little ends here, because sometimes you can't get all the way down to here. So what I want to do now with needle and thread is to just come in and sew with a little back stitch. Down to where this machine stitching would have ended. Like so. Now, so that's what it's going to look like. So ultimately, this will come over. We'll trim this little seam allowance off. Let me just do that right now to show you. So the fold, when you press everything, the fold is going to look like this. So I will go back to the other side and I will meet you back here for the next step. Our next step is securing the two shoulder seams on the facings together. So let me just zoom in and show you what that's going to look like. There we are. So we want, there we are. We want to walk this shoulder seam to there. And we don't have to make a severe tack, but you want to tack it a little bit. My apologies for the sound outside. This is New York, so. So there's one. Now I will go off camera, sew the other one, and I will bring back the results. Here we are. So the next step is going to be turning the lining right side out.
Kenneth, I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I've noticed in other situations when you tack something down, you use these sort of large stitches. And I think you said before it was to give it a little wiggle room.
Yes. That's,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
is there an actual name for that type of stitch?
You know, I call it a tack. You know, they're different terms. If you've heard the term swing tack generally is like a thread bar like this that is covered with a buttonhole stitch. I don't know if this has a specific name, but it falls in the same category as the swing tack.
All right, thank you.
Okay. You can see here, I've turned the lining right side out. One thing I want to do is to take the sleeve linings and push them into the body linings. There we are. So it's starting to look like something. And then it's really a matter of pressing. I don't feel I have to do a hard press here. Let me just demonstrate on one side here. So I don't really set the iron down. I just like to smooth it. So we work around all the way around. Almost done. Okay, so have the lining in. You can see now we have a little bit of a jump pleat in the center. So our next step is back at the work table. So here we are at the work table. Now, what I like to do next is at the shoulders. I want to feel where the seam is on the outside and match it to the shoulder seam on the lining. Give me a little pin here, because see what we want to do, move that over just a bit. So I want to pin because I'm going to be sewing one of the seam allowances of the lining to the inside of the shoulder pad. So now let's go up into the lining. Bring this up and over. And so here you can see there's the seam allowance. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start the stitching. Because again, this doesn't have to be a lot of stitching. It just has to be some. Because what I found is if you anchor this to the shoulder pad, this is going to keep the lining from going a little bit wonky. So now actually I'm going to go pull the pin out from the. So I pulled the pin from the lining because now I can just sew this seam allowance to the shoulder pad. Now note the crooked seam there. It's in a lining. It does not exist. So you have to nail it all the way up. You just want to catch it so that it secures the shoulder seam of the lining. And once you've done that, then you will bring this back like so. Now I will go off camera and sew the other one, and then we will proceed with the next step. So we have now the shoulders secured. The next step here is going to be matching the hem to the body. Now, what you can see here, this is the center. What I did is I matched the side seams together to find the dead center because we want this dead center here to match this seam here. So when you're pinning, you just want to pin, about 3/8 of an inch past the cut edge because this whole hem we're going to pin down, and we will hand stitch this with the felling stitch. As we work along, you want to match this side seam here with the side seam on your hem. Now, what you're going to look at here, what you're going to see is that this is slightly longer. The lining is slightly longer than the hem allowance. And so you just sort of ease the lining onto the hem allowance of the body. And the beauty of the felling stitch is that it's going to help you to shrink up that lining so that it matches. So having your center back match, having your side seam. Yes, go ahead.
Felling stitch.
Well, you're going to see that.
Okay, all right, but it's spelled F-E-L-L?
I-N-G, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Match is going to allow you to distribute the excess along here. So now we move over to here, and same thing. So you're going to bring that in just a bit. There you go. Okay. Because you want to cover the hemming stitches that you sewed earlier. And what will happen when this is finished is it will create what's called a jump pleat. So then once we get over into this area, you don't have to sew this all the way up. You can sew this, I'd say, leaving about 1.5 to 2 inches from here. You leave that inside because what will happen is this will all go down and fold over and cover this. So this last bit in here doesn't absolutely have to be nailed down. Now I will work from the center back to the other side and bring back the results. Okay, we are almost there. Here we are. Our next step is going to be fell stitching this in place. So the fell stitch, zoom in just a little bit here. I'm going to start here. So now the object of the fell stitch is you're just barely catching the folded edge. Let me sew a few stitches, then I'll get it closer to the camera to let me anchor this. Okay, so there we are. There. So you're going to come in and diagonally back out. Again, this is called a fell stitch or a felling stitch. You're just catching the hem facing, not much else. If you catch a little bit of the bias canvas, that's okay too. You don't want this to show from the outside. So the stitches here, about 1 every 1/4 of an inch. And so, again, as you probably have guessed, I'm not going to make you watch all of this. I'm going to sew a few more and then show you the result. Then I will sew off out to the other edge. So that's what it's going to look like. It's going to have a little bit of a dimple, but that's going to be covered because everything, the jump pleat will cover that. So I will continue sewing to the other end and I will bring back the results. Okay, I'm back and headed towards the finish. Just a few more stitches here. There we go. Okay. And so I'm going to secure the thread here. So now, let me show you the results. So, yes, so what'll happen here is that the jump pleat will form. That's supposed to drop down like so. So now what we'll do is we'll go over to the pressing table. So to figure out how to set the jump pleat, what you're going to do is you're going to pull this, and where it folds, that's the jump pleat. And you can give it a little steam. So you're going to have about 3/8 of an inch showing here. And you don't want to press a hard crease. You just want to have it fall down gracefully. I guess that would be the best way of putting it. And so here we are. Let's secure the other side. There we are. Okay. Now, the point of the jump pleat, for those who haven't really heard of a jump pleat, is if your lining shrinks, if your fashion fabric stretches, you have a little play. So that's why I don't like to press a crease here. Some people do. If you wish to press a crease, all good, but not my favorite look. So here. There we go. So there we have it. So our next step is going to be back to the work table so we can hem the cuffs. So I'm going to stop here and see if there are any questions.
No.
We're good?
Mhm.
Okay, we're headed towards the finish. Now, as you can see, I worked ahead and pinned one of the cuffs. So what I want to do now is just come down here and pin the other cuff. Now, what I did off camera is I made sure that there was no twist in the lining. It's easy to do. So I made sure that there is the shoulder seam, the upper seam. So I want to match that with this here. That's the seam on the cuff. And then there is the underarm seam. So we match that. And again, we pin this fold, say about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch from the cut edge of the hem allowance. So what I found in this, after we get these two secured, it's far easier to turn the cuff out like so. And then you can get everything in the proper position to pin. Like so. Now we will sew this again with a felling stitch like we sewed the lower hem. I won't make you watch me do that. Now you're probably wondering why the felling stitch. What I like about the felling stitch is you're catching just the edge. And so what this stitch does is it allows the lining to hinge so that it creates a conducive arrangement for the jump pleat. So we have a jump pleat here, we'll end up with a jump pleat here. But as I said, I will sew these off camera and bring back the results. Almost finished. So let me secure the thread here. And then as you can see, sewn with felling stitch. So now let me just lay this out on the table and draw the camera out. So really the only missing thing is the buttons on the pocket. Those will be next. And the final touch, putting on the buttons. What I have done here is I've measured 2 inches in from the edge and 2 inches down from the top. So I have this intersection here. And so then what I will do is sew on the covered button. No mystery there. So I'm going to give it After this, one more pass. There we are. And then wrap the shank, secure the thread. And we're finished. So there we have it. So now I will go off camera, remove all the basting, and we will survey what we have created. So here we get to enjoy the fruits of our labor. We have the jacket lying on the table, as you can see. Then we have the jacket open, so you can see the full lining. And finally, we put it on the dress form. So you get to see what it looks like from the front, from one side, and then from the other side. I hope you've enjoyed the class as much as I've enjoyed creating it. I look forward to seeing you in future classes. And there we are. Ta-da!
Ta-da.
So questions, comments, hopes.
Doing next. I need another.
Another. Well, you know, I'm contemplating because I teach like it's like a 3 installment class on the tailor jacket and so what I do is, you know, there's like the beginning and the fitting, and then there's the second and the third, and so I'm contemplating starting that again in the fall because I've had some people who took the first one who haven't taken the second and the third. So I'm contemplating doing that. So, you know, that might be something to consider if you're so inclined.
It's
Well, go ahead.
What was that again, Nina?
a wonderful class.
One of my students. And speaking of students, I'm so glad I'm done with FIT. Yay.
Oh, you're done now for the semester.
Thank heavens. Yes. Kids are different now. I'm going to sound like a grumpy old man. Kids are different now. What I said at the beginning, I had one student at the beginning of the semester. I said, okay, kids, if you have an issue, if you're having a trouble, if you're having something in the semester, tell me when it starts. And true to form, there was one at the end of the semester. There was this eight-page long email about I had this and then this and the la 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 la. It was like,
What did she have? Like illnesses and
well, you know,
problems?
and this is one of the things I'm going to say to them is like, if it's a physical procedure, I don't want to know what it is, because she was very graphic about telling me what it was. And like, I did not need to see that mental image. So, but yeah, you know, it's puzzling. You know, I just like, don't, you know, tell me when we can do something about it. Don't wait till the end of the semester.
Yeah.
I work at a community college, and students do not want to talk to people. The whole idea of talking to someone freaks them out.
Which I find puzzling, but okay, you know, I didn't.
It's the phone.
Cell phone, yeah.
Yeah, they don't even want to do a phone call. They want to be able to text and step back, not feel any pressure. Don't ask me to actually respond to you as a human. And I mean, it really is a challenge that these students don't know how to engage. And
They
it
don't
really is a
understand.
generational change.
It's the asynchronous communication. They're
Yeah.
always given time to respond with the texts and the emails, and to respond immediately human to human. That's a skill.
Yeah.
And they do not understand deadlines. They do not understand that when you say something has to get done, that it's part of a process.
Yeah.
Like we run into this constantly with our financial aid. It's
Mhm.
like you haven't submitted the forms and it's 2 days before class starts.
Yeah.
We can't turn it around. There are steps involved, but it does not register because they're so used to instantaneous getting what they want because we've taught them that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's a challenge.
we as
it is
parents do.
frustrating. Go ahead, Christy.
No, I was just saying, I personally am to blame for some of that because I did a little bit of lawnmower parenting with my kids. And I mean, they're fine. My kids are fine, but I can see how that was, there were some battles they should have fought on their
Oh,
own.
see, this is the whole thing. I talked to my students. I said there are two things in fashion that are sacred. First is deadlines.
Mhm.
Second is follow up. I have a
Yeah.
student from last semester. It was on December 23rd. Now, I turned my grades in on the 19th, and she sent me this email. What did I make on my midterm? I was like, you didn't check? Because when I was in college, I was like, I always knew where my grades were kind of in the semester. So I went into her, the two assignments. She hadn't turned in either of them.
Oh my
So I
God.
did screenshots and sent them to her. And I said, I have nothing from you. That's why you got an F. And she's like, well, I'm my grade point average, I may not be able to graduate. I'm like, deadlines and follow up. Did it occur to you to ask me during the semester what my grade was? Because we would have found out at that point that, okay, I don't have anything in there. And so
Yeah,
it's,
bad.
but one thing I learned, which is really useful, they call an F a terminal grade, meaning you can't raise it.
All right.
So, this one student, when she was, kind of hammering on me about, oh, my grade point average and all this, I said, I can't do anything with you until the spring semester starts because I have a deadline I have to meet at the end of January. And when I'm not at FIT, I don't think about you people. So she emailed me in January and said, can you see if you can change my grade? And I'm like, well, I'll see what I can do. And they said, no, an F is F, sir, you can't go from F to a D. F is like they're done. So I'll probably see her in the fall again if she's gonna, she wants to get her degree. But God, it's I don't want to sound like a cranky old man, but I'm feeling like I'm turning into a cranky old man because I just want to say to these kids, come on, kids.
Well, I don't think these are unreasonable expectations.
Yes.
There seems to be, to me, a lot of people, maybe this always existed, but they don't want the rules to apply to them. Like they understand that it needs to be fair for this person, that person, and the other person, but for them it's different because of this excuse, whatever.
Special, yeah.
I mean, all week long, I'm the student liaison for Costume College as well as the vice president of CG, all that stuff. So all week long, I've been dealing with students trying to register for workshops. By the way, year 3 are doing quite well. You're sold out in 2. And I mean, some of the excuses people send me and the whining because we do it in a lottery system so that people can get a fair shot at getting into the workshops that they want.
Yeah.
And, cheater pumpkin eaters trying to slip their friends in and all this stuff. And then, well, I need you to understand, we were at college together and we want to do this thing together.
Oh.
And I'm like, well, she's not a student. You registered somebody who's not even registered for Costume College. Well, she hasn't yet, but she's going to. And I'm like, yeah, well, she's coming off the list until she does. And by the way, you got in early and she won't be able to get in until now, the 25th, because that's when the later
I know. Yeah. So I try to focus on the students who are good because overall, overall they're pretty good. This semester, happily, I had classes that, the kids were nice kids. and overall they were engaged and all of that. So, but I'm just glad it's over, because people say, well, why don't you teach her in summer? It's like, well, I have other things I'm doing. And also I need to wash my brain out from FIT, because, the kids I like, it's some of the people who run things that I try to put as much distance as I can between us. So yes, but yes, yay, that's done. And I have this, I have the big heavy lifting off the book done. And so today it's sort of like, oh my God, what do I do with myself? So,
Well, I've got a honey-do list if you.
well, I'm knitting. Yeah, it's I've been living with this project since October. So it's, there's one, there like some little pieces. The gal I'm working with, the art director is great, the editor great, and the three of us are kind of working, and we sort of set this gal off to the side. But there's one question I need her to answer, and I have been hammering her, because the Palace Theater in New York, I may have talked about this, but it's kind of fascinating. The Palace Theater, like back in the day, if you played the Palace, you had arrived. It was like the tippy top. And so real estate in New York, they wanted that space, and the city said, not so fast. You have to preserve the theater. So what they did is they picked the whole theater up 3 stories and built it into this new building, which is kind of amazing if you think about it.
That's a tax credit at work. Just say.
And good. And so while they were doing this, they restored the inside of the theater, which is magnificent. Oh my God, it's gorgeous. But so Jack, who does photos for Threads, is working on another book with this gal who's running this project. They're writing a book on how they did it. And so he did all these photos of inside the house. And so I have a photo of the facade of the Palace Theater, and we're gonna, the marquee, and we're gonna do this fake kind of Broadway show poster. And so, of course, my question to her is, do we have permission to use Palace? And she's been kind of sandbagging me for the longest time. So I sent her the photo that I'm using, because what I had to do is I had to do a bunch of Photoshop. So, it's the Palace at night, and it fixed all that kind of weird stuff about the light post and that sort of thing. And so I said to her, you need to get this information to me, because I do not want at the last minute a mad scramble, because they're saying, cease and desist, or we go to press, and afterwards is it like, what the hell is this? Cease and desist. Like, you have to answer that question. So that's the one little piece. That photo is like waiting for that decision. But other than that, it's, and working on the introduction, it's done, and I'm feeling very excited about how it's looking. Tonight, my husband is going to kind of start showing me the finished drawings for the fashions, which is going to be exciting. So, but yeah, we'll deliver it on time, because deadlines. So yeah. So, okay. So I would like to thank you all for attending. And any questions, comments, or whatever before we sign off?
It's been a great class.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you.
I think Heather and I are going to endeavor to finish our coats before
I see you.
Before you see us in August.
Yeah, August, right?
August, July 31st.
I had this like little clutch right here, because it was like, did I get the dates wrong? Because I have things scheduled, but okay.
No. It's July 31st through August 3rd.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. Yes.
And I'm going to be contacting you next week with the list of your students' names for the workshops that you're doing, and all that stuff. And then we'll talk about other.
Okay. And so I'm just kind of sorry, ladies. So what date is August 3rd? Well, I could look that up on my phone right now. One moment.
So August 3rd is a Monday, I think.
Okay.
The 3rd is actually the Sunday.
The Sunday, yeah.
Is it? Oh, sorry. I have sticky notes everywhere. You're right. It is a Sunday. For me, I'm there from Tuesday or Wednesday through Monday.
Yeah. And
So
when do I leave?
you leave on, I have you scheduled to leave on Sunday because you said you didn't want to stay for the tea, although we can change that if you want to stay till.
Actually, it would work better if I left earlier because I'm just looking at I may have double booked something. I'm glad we had this conversation because I would.
Do you have your flights?
I don't have the flight yet.
I would do that.
Okay.
Do not go out of Newark.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my husband telling me to tell you that.
Yeah.
Our kid went out of Newark when he came home, and it was right when they had that all those outages and scary stuff. And
Yeah.
planes are dropping out of the sky like
Yeah.
these business right now. So
Yeah. So okay. So yeah. So let's do an email thing because I may have to. This is one of those I may have to move something else, but that's okay. We can work with that. Okay.
yeah.
Hey. Okay. So
Yeah.
if there are no other questions or comments,
Thank
I will
you.
bid you all a fond farewell. Go out and do something fun this weekend.
Yeah, it's beautiful weather.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
You
Thank
too.
Bye now.
Bye.
And there we are.